Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Projector Movement Podcast. I'm Sarah, and I am so excited to be joined by Rebecca, our in-house human design expert. Today, we are going to be discussing the specific soundboarding authority. And just first and foremost, welcome, Rebecca, to the podcast again. I always love having you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So let's take a moment, just take a deep breath, like I always do. Just ground us here in this moment. Won't be too long because excited to get into the nuts and bolts of this specific authority because I know there's so many questions. But let's just take a breath, nice exhale, just get into our bodies. And then when we're ready, can come back into the space. Just sometimes that little breath helps us land. Maybe you could link that even into if you're a soundboarding listening to this, if you have a soundboarding authority, why taking a breath could even be beneficial. Um, but most importantly, if you're listening to this, most likely you have a soundboarding authority, and it's an authority that gets a lot of questions here at the Projector Movement. A lot of people want to understand their authority more. And so we have Rebecca here to dive in deep and to really explain, tell us what you know about the soundboarding authority.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the Soundboarding Authority, we're partnering two types, two projector subtypes into this category. And it's kind of simplifying it just so we can pull this together and explain it to both types. So when we're referring to Soundboarding Authority, we can put into that the self-projected projector
Mm,
and the mental projector. So different types, different processes for sure, but nonetheless needing to hear themselves speak.
mm,
You're going to have the inner process going on, and it's interesting with the breath, right? Because I feel self-projected and mental projectors can be very up here and sometimes like up in our minds, and we need to kind of connect with our bodies a bit more and listen into our voice and the tonality and such. But both self-projected and mental projectors are designed to take their inside thoughts and put them outside of themselves by
mm,
speaking aloud and hearing it back. And that's why we're putting soundboarding authority with both of those groups together. Does that make
mm.
sense?
Totally. So you have to hear yourself talk outside of yourself.
Yes.
Did I hear that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's different processes behind it, like the self-projector projector is that because of your G center being defined to the throat. So there is this consistent inner identity coming up through voice.
Mm,
Um, Whereas the mental projector doesn't have that, and we have this mental definition in some form coming out through the throat. So we're speaking very differently. But both types need to hear themselves speak out loud. Otherwise, we're going to get really, really lost in our inner worlds and become almost like trapped in our own version of reality and not actually know which path to go down. Our voice very much unlocks the keys that we need to discover which path we need to go down. So if we're not speaking aloud, we're going to just get very lost in our inner voice, in our mind, in our inner worlds. And that's not going to help us.
mm. Yes, and you are a mental projector, so I know this one you can relate to on a personal level.
Yes, it's made a drastic difference. And I remember at the beginning of my experiment, because soundboarding's very tricky to find information on, especially as a mental projector. And I've heard this from the same with self-projected projectors. It's difficult to find information on. So knowing how to soundboard can be quite tricky. So it's a guessing game. So, for example, one of the experiments I did at the beginning of my journey in human design was I was like, no, I trust my mind because that's all us mental projectors have. So I would sit there for a while and journal it down and write down everything I was thinking into paragraphs and paragraphs because it helped me make sense in my mind. And I ended up putting it into a very short, succinct paragraph. And I thought, okay, human design says to speak this out loud. So I spoke out this paragraph to a friend, and this really certain paragraph that I had written for hours on end made absolutely no sense as soon as I read it out to one
Wow.
person. So it
Wow.
just showed me how stuck I can get in my own mind, how certain I can get in my own mind, and how speaking it out to just one person unlocked so many different ways of seeing that one circumstance and helped me to discover why soundboarding is super important.
Mm, beautiful. Yeah, you make a point that I think I was illustrating at the beginning, how there isn't a lot of information and there's a huge desire to understand how to soundboard and what that is. So thank you for just expressing your own personal example of how you did that and how you're learning how to do that.
Yeah.
Um, what would you say would be something that people would like to know or they don't know about the Soundboarding Authority that you find interesting or that you would want to tell them? Something unique.
Yeah, there's a few different things. When we're speaking out loud, and one of the big things within human design is no authority has words. As soon as it has words, it's the mind, and it's like, okay, well, how's that going to work with our authorities of soundboarding? And part of this is when we're soundboarding out loud, we're not always listening for the words. We're listening for the resonance, the tonality of your voice. You're listening to hear if it makes sense. There's
Mhm.
slightly different points for both self-projected and mental projectors. It's not the exact same points. So it's not about just kind of hearing yourself and going, yeah, that sounds about right. No, it's really hearing the resonance over time, needing to slow down and hear yourself through multiple different auras rather than just one aura. Even as a self-projected projector, you're going to need to be doing that. And one of my other big favorite ones at the moment is, and it was a big breakthrough in my kind of soundboarding experience, which was I was told that I needed to have my trusted soundboarders, and that meant me picking a select few of my friends and going, right, they're my allocated soundboarder, and they're my allocated soundboarder. And I would sit there and I'd call them up and go, can I speak this out with you? Because they wouldn't understand the human design lingo of soundboarding, or some of them did, some of them didn't. And I'd sit there and tell them the whole backstory and then explain everything and then try and sound build out what I was thinking about this thing. And it just became really confusing. So something that has come through many years of experimenting with this is you don't always need one person or a couple of people you're going to. You can, but you don't always need to have a soundboarding session.
Hmm.
You are soundboarding every minute of every single day, as soon as you walk into a different environment, as soon as you're speaking to the coffee shop person, as soon as you're speaking to the dog owners in the park when you're walking your dog. You're soundboarding every minute of every single day. They don't need to know the whole backstory. And that can also be another interesting element on the soundboarding journey. So there's so many different nuances to it to help us reach that clarity around which direction to go into.
Yeah. Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you for that. That makes a lot of sense, the way that you put that.
Yeah. There's one more that just came into my mind, which I think would be fascinating for this.
Yeah.
And this especially goes for self-projected projectors, but could work for mental projectors, which is while we're soundboarding out, it doesn't mean that just because we've said it, that it is the path we're going on. Actually, the more you
Mhm.
speak out, you're finding the keys to unlock the path. But it's almost like once you unlock the path, it's a yes or a no. So it's
Mm.
almost like we have to speak out all the different options to discover if that even is a path that's open to us. So just
Mm.
because you speak, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. It has to be the right path. So
No,
lots of
I think
fascinating
that's huge.
nuances.
That to me, I think would be a huge benefit to know that just because you're saying something, it doesn't actually mean that it's what is the right decision, that there's more to it than just it's coming through my voice. Is it the right, is it the, how do you decide, how do you know when it, if it's right just because you're speaking it? Where's the authority guide you there? Is there more,
Yeah.
there's more to that, I'm sure.
Yeah, this really falls within the mirrors of the people we're speaking to. And
Okay.
sometimes, and I see it a lot within my self-projected projector clients, but also my mental projector clients as well. Sometimes that person can't always see it themselves. And
Hmm.
sometimes it takes that real mirror of someone going, you got excited when you said that. Or actually, you're saying this, but I'm not feeling it. And they're
Got
like,
it.
oh. And they don't have to know you particularly well. So this is, again, we don't need just one friend. They don't have to know the whole backstory. You can see a person light up when they're saying it, and you can see a person that is not feeling it at all. So sometimes it takes a mirror because projectors can't always see themselves very
Right.
clearly. And that's why, for example, in soundboarding groups in the past that I've run, even if they've known each other for like one session or they've known each other for like 5 minutes, it doesn't matter. They're able to sit with someone one on one in a really kind of beautiful container and someone go, hang on, I'm going to call you out on that. And they can see it so deeply
Wow.
because most of the world and most of the time we're speaking to generators, but actually if we're speaking one-on-one to someone with the same authority, we're already very in tune with hearing people's voices. So we can sense that kind of
Mm.
tonality shift and the body language change.
Wow, that's I didn't know that. That's very fascinating. So
Yeah.
it's in the response of the other it's in the people you're soundboarding with that can really you can really gauge your truth of what to do.
Yeah.
Mm.
It can be, and you can sense it yourself and things like that, and that's something you can hone in. But your mirrors are so important. I always say to people to soundboard until you are surprised, and sometimes that surprise comes from someone pointing out something about your body language or something that you've
Okay.
said, and that surprise could be, oh, like I thought I was really into this, or but someone has seen something, so it's not then an authority in saying I've got to do it like that, but it's now I've got something else to soundboard on. Now I've got something else to consider that I didn't consider before. And great, that's surprise. We're doing it until we have something surprising. Otherwise, it's
Mhm.
just our mind.
Right. Right. Wow. I hope people out there are getting some good nuggets to take home because this is all good, juicy information that, like you said, it's not very readily available out there. That leads me to my next question, which it is part of the question. It has to do with the challenges, which there isn't a lot of information out there.
Mhm.
But what else would you say for people who are struggling to understand this particular authority? What would you talk about the challenges that they can perceive to have or any support in that area?
Yeah, there were a few kind of blocks and challenges with the soundboarding authority. And one big thing that keeps coming up for a lot of my self-projected clients, and it can be for mental projectors as well, but self-projected especially. And it doesn't mean every self-projected experiences this, but it's very frequent that I get this, which is there's a block around even allowing yourself to speak it out loud. And
Mm,
it seems that a lot of my self-projected clients will describe how they've stopped themselves from speaking, or they used to speak so much so that either their family or their friends or their colleagues have said, "Can you just stop?" And
mm,
maybe that was in the past and it's not like that anymore. So they keep their voice hidden and they feel like they haven't got a space to speak. The problem is with that is that a self-projected projector will then have this block around, I can't speak it out because it's too weird, or whatever the narrative is, because this is something that's come up. But if you can't speak out the weirdness, if you can't speak out what you're got within you, then you're kind of stopping yourself from finding your path
yeah,
as this type of projector. So that's a huge, huge block. If there is a block around, I can't let my voice be heard.
right,
And it's a vulnerable authority to have because you've kind of got to share some stuff, not everything, but you do have to use your voice.
right.
That's a huge block that I find coming up as one of them. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like the double hit because I see projectors having blocks just without the motor to the throat, and we have blocks in speaking in general, and then being a self-projected projector with this needing to be the way you make decision, and then having that being judged or not knowing how to use this authority, it would be this double-edged block, like a double blocked throat chakra almost.
Mhm.
Which, yeah, then leads me to, you know, in a sense, what you're going to be offering through the projector movement soon, this beautiful training where people are going to come together to learn how to soundboard. What do you see happens when you get a bunch of soundboarding projectors coming together to learn how to soundboard? What's the magic in that offering?
Yeah, there is just this. I mean, part of the offering is not just about how to soundboard, but also how to be a receptive soundboard yourself. So it's not like I throw people into a group and go, right, you listen to you and you listen to you, and they go, what am I listening for? No, you're kind of trained on both halves of it, which is
Okay.
important, which helps you understand your authority even more deeply. It's that kind of safe space so that people can speak it out because we're both being vulnerable in that space. Um, but it's that kind of auric situation with the projector that can just zoom in and see. So we can see way more than the words. We can hear the tonality. We can see the body language. So having self-projected and mental projectors, and there's the experiment of one on like mental with a self-projected, and then self-projected on self-projected, mental with mental. But there's always this beautiful way of being able to ask really good questions and
Mm,
being able to see straight through it. Because one of the challenges that mental projectors have can be, and self-projectors as well, can be around not knowing who they can soundboard with, and knowing that that person needs to ask us questions, but that person hasn't been trained to ask questions.
Mm,
Whereas the experimentation that we do within the soundboarding group is the tasks are set so that they can only ask certain questions. There are really specific parameters just enable us to really experiment in a controlled way, which
mm,
means that you have someone asking you the questions that you need to go deeper into the thing you need to soundboard on.
mm,
So
mm,
very beautifully intense, but very kind of safe, supportive, and friendly environment that gets people clarity quite fast, is what I've discovered from the last group that I ran, which was, yeah, beautiful experience to see.
mm. Beautiful. So if you are interested and you are a soundboarding projector and you're wanting to dive deeper into your authority and actually learn how to work with this unique, brilliant authority in your life on both angles, there's a link below in this podcast. We highly recommend you signing up to work with the brilliant wizard, Rebecca, and to really understand yourself more in a really intimate way. There's such benefit when projectors learn how to live by their design, and this is such a pivotal part of the design is to really understand your authority.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just to emphasize that people think the human design experiment is deconditioning and becoming a projector and things
Right.
like that. But without using your authority, you're not in your experiment. It's such a pivotal part. If you're a self-projected or mental projector who doesn't know how to soundboard, you're not going to be making decisions as yourself. So all of this lovely validating information we get from human design, then we won't see the actionable change. So yes, really important to understand how to make decisions through this authority if you're self-projected or mental.
Mm, perfect. We hope to see you there. Thank you for listening. Have a beautiful, beautiful day. Take care, everyone.